succeed, but moreover, it's an important message, and an early one, about Corbyn's leadership. He may make a strategic concession and say this is a free vote, a conscious vote, so as to avoid the signal that it's actually anything to do with his leadership that people are breaking away from. And John McDonnell, his Shadow Chancellor, is hinting that that may be the case. But nevertheless, I think it's hard, isn't it, to escape the fact that it has ramifications for his leadership if he has a rebellion like that.
But is it a rebellion? That's the question, isn't it? Because obviously he was head of the Stop the War coalition. He's very anti-war, but people there, I think MPs are very tormented about what to do right, what's the right thing to do, as they were last time. We discussed a lot last time. A lot of people were very, they said to themselves, yes, we've got to do something, but is this the right thing to do?
But given the Scottish National Party and the fact that David Cameron's only got a majority of 12, could he still actually swing it, even with, say, 50 Labour MPs?
No, if 50 Labour MPs rebelled, he would win, unless there was something truly unexpected on the Tory benches. But if that failed to materialise, and there will, of course, be some Tory rebels who say we shouldn't be intervening in the affairs of others, and some abstainers, then he might be in trouble. But I think it's interesting, we haven't seen the inside, but the Observer's got a joint piece by Andrew Mitchell, who, Parche Plebgate, is something of a kind of former international development secretary, bit of a conscience guy in the Tory party, co-written with Joe Cox, who's a Labour MP and used to be the head of policy at Oxfam. So demonstrating this is not a strict party political issue at all.
And I think when we look at the discussion this week about bombs in America, about what happened from the US and hitting the Médecins Sans Frontières hospital
in northern Afghanistan.
This is what many people are thinking. They're saying, yes, we have to do something, but are bombs the right thing? They can hit the wrong targets. They can hit humanitarian
right to get involved
targets.
when Russia is flying planes?
Russia's flying planes, and I think we've had a discussion quite a lot. And Alex, I think one of your principles is that if you're going to go in, you should go in with troops.
You can't enforce it from the air.
Yeah.
There's another Corbyn story, I don't know if you've got...
Yeah, I was just going to backtrack, because that was back on the Sunday Telegraph, so let's move that back. I just wonder, is this a bit thin?
Well...
Corbyn's IRA links revealed. Well, I mean, clearly there was some sort of link with the Republican
Jeremy Corbyn was always... when he spoke openly about these things, and he's a bit more kind of considered in his tone now as leader of his party, but in the past, he has for some decades expressed an open belief in a united Ireland. It's a respectable intellectual principle with which I completely disagree, given the views of people in Northern Ireland, but it's something you can argue. What I think is not justifiable is the support that he gave to IRA Sinn Féin up to, including and after the time of the Brighton bombing. And what this piece in the Telegraph talks about is that there was a left-wing magazine of which Corbyn was on the editorial board that wrote an article praising, not just saying, you've got to try and think about the cause behind it, but praising the 1984 Brighton bombing.
Although we should add, Mr Corbyn did not actually write that himself.
He was on the editorial board. Yeah. But I think, actually, when you say, is this thin, I don't think this takes us forward very much, because we already know that amazing right-wing demagogue Neil Kinnock condemned Corbyn's support for IRA Sinn Féin when he was leader of the Labour Party. So this is not news. Yeah. It might be helpful for the public to be better informed about Jeremy Corbyn if they didn't know about him before, but it's not really news.
And I think also, number one, it was a long time ago, and number two, thankfully, the troubles, the difficulties, the problems in Ireland are over.
You either believe
we have a peaceful union.
No, thanks to those who supported terrorism. You either believe in violence or you don't.
But I wonder whether his key demographic, his key supporters are going to say this is a long time ago, and things like the editorial board, and there was a member and there was an article, it does begin to seem a tiny bit tenuous.
Especially if you're then going to actually argue, I don't believe in violence in terms of international relations, I don't bomb Syria.
I believe in violence when it's in the UK.
Anyway. Welcome back. More from the Sunday papers with Kate and with Alex as we head now for the front page of The Observer. And it is the latest, if it does take place, vote on Syria. Of course, David Cameron dented by the failure to swing it last time, but suggestion now that he may have the help of 50 Labour MPs who would they defy Corbyn, or is it going to be a free vote?
Well, that is the question, isn't it, is whether or not Corbyn is going to say this is a free vote, this is a conscience vote, because many people are in very clear two minds about this. But we saw that before with the vote failing before with Cameron. We saw it indeed in America when there were lots of questions and problems over the vote there. It is that people are saying to themselves, we need to help Syria, something needs to be done, but is this the right thing to do? And bombs miss, they hit the wrong targets, they hit Médecins Sans Frontières hospital, which is obviously something...
That was in Afghanistan, yeah.
Which was something, if that were to happen, which possibly might, it's going to be a disaster. So I think this is a two-pronged story, really. It's saying it looks like we are going to end up discussing bombing Syria once more, and also if we do, there may be 50 MPs who choose to say, Corbyn is going to say very clearly, let's not do it, but there are going to be MPs who disagree with him. But whether or not that's going to be enough to swing the vote, because there may be Tory MPs who swing the other way, because there were quite a lot of Tory rebels last time it was voted on.
Yeah,
and I think Cameron as well is going to fear failing again.
Corbyn's position is clear and consistent. He opposes British military intervention. I think that's a completely reasonable position. It's one, obviously, that some people in his party disagree with. The question that I have about this issue, and it's why I'm now uncertain on it, is whether, because the question of intervention by us has changed. It's now Russians in the air and active in that environment. So it's not just committing on a humanitarian basis to help people in that country. It's getting in the same airspace as a volatile power led by Vladimir Putin. Now, you can think what you like about Putin, and many of us have negative views. You've still got to understand the fact that there is a real prospect of things going very badly wrong with that, and that must weigh in the debate too.
Or he could be dropping ordnance on Iranians without realising it. I mean, it's going to be a very confused picture with disparate elements in different sections of Syria. So it's...
Yes, and I think what's saying at the time, there's going to be a launch of the all-party group on Syria on Tuesday, saying that one thing that I think we can all agree on, that we need to try and have urgent diplomatic efforts to bring the president to the negotiating table, because that's something that I think on all sides we need to have some kind of negotiation.
Elsewhere in the foreign policy front, of course, Turkey suffering its own difficulties. Back to the Sunday Times front page, bombs kill, 95, 96, 97, the figure's still changing, but clearly with this taking place in the capital Ankara now, President Erdogan denouncing it a heinous attack, a terrorist attack, as they've indicated. Still no indication who's...
It's clearly connected to our last story in one of potentially two ways. So the Syrians and the Turks have had this semi-uneasy truce for some time, and contrary to the desire of the West, the Turks were not allowing Western powers to use Incirlik Air Force or use their airspace to commit strikes against the Syrians. Those rules have changed now, and the Turks themselves have been committing strikes against people they say are ISIS, many observers say are the PKK, and their own Kurdish
which is a Kurdish separatist group.
Exactly. So the two prime suspects for this awful attack in Ankara are, one, IS having their revenge against Turkey, aligning themselves with the West, or two, the PKK, so the Kurdish separatists who want to break away from Turkey.
Shireen Tadros, then, our Middle East correspondent, was indicating that the immediate anger and the protests then, as a result of this, were against the Turkish government itself.
Saying here that there have been massive anti-government protests. People obviously feeling they don't feel safe, they don't feel secure, and I think it's obviously very upsetting and difficult to see, isn't it? Because, the rather shocking moment that it exploded, and certainly 68 people killed at the scene, 180 people are injured, and I think we are all now waiting to see who claims responsibility for this.
And a very volatile
attack.
Political situation, of course, with the outcome of the forthcoming election still not really clear.
For the Turks, in that political environment, strikes against the Kurdish separatists is wildly popular. So they took an opportunity in international discourse to sort out what they saw as their own backyard disputes, committing many strikes against the PKK, with a few strikes against supposed ISIS as well.
But really complicating the whole picture.
Absolutely right.
OK, well, let's look at something that's related to this that you spotted on the inside page of The Star, page 9. UK bomb experts sent to Morocco. Let's just move this across and see the relevance of this. Bomb disposal teams sent because of fears terrorists are planning to target British tourists.
Yes, well, this is all a speculative... I mean, it's all a
I was going to say...
Story. A defence source says that MI6 is doing this. I mean...
This is not an official warning at all.
Not an official warning, not even an official word from the Ministry of Defence or...
Advice on the
MI6
Foreign Office website saying there's a
release.
high threat of terrorism, but as attacks could be indiscriminate and target places visited by foreigners.
It's a pretty specific story, though. Well, look, I don't remember the last time we had the Star on. Well done, the Star. It's a proper story.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great to have two big foreign policy stories on the front of two of the Sundays, and two, it's great to see this from the Star. This is a genuine, interesting story about British troops being committed in an advisory capacity to assist another power in their ability to conduct defensive operations, that is to say, bomb disposal. It's something that, for many reasons, connected to things we've been discussing tonight and IRA and so forth, it's something we British troops are exceptionally good at.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that we share this kind of knowledge with powers grappling with that kind of terrorism.
And the other aspect, I mean, there's a picture there, of course, of the scene on the Tunisian beach where the tourists were shot, and yet we now have the Tunisian reformers, if you like, recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize. So there is a different side to this picture of North Africa.
There is a different side, and I think, you know, it's very sad about, obviously, the terrible tragedy in Tunisia and the terrible impact it had on the country, which does rely a lot on tourism.
Yeah.
And that is very similar for Morocco, saying here that obviously the half